Hello, you're here with Miss Libby Rose and welcome to this series of super simple Halloween costume making. So this is just some ideas for you to kind of run with and create for your own, or you can do it word for word as I've done it. It's totally up to you, but I just really want to get your creative juices flowing to make Halloween costumes and to make it a little bit less stressful time of year trying to get costumes made and finished. And it's quite a fun thing to do together as well. So if you've got children and you've got children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews that you want to start making with, then this is a really great time of year to be sewing together. So first up, we're going to start with this little tabard top. Now it's made from Fat Quarters, and we can size it up or down. Now I'm going to be doing the child's size, but as I go through the steps I'll tell you how you can add more. So you might need more fat quarters if you're doing it in a bigger size, and -1 if you want it for just a little diddy person. But I'll sort of give you some ideas for that, but you will need to have the person that it's being made for on hand at some point to create the sizing for that. So to make this top in particular, you're going to need a fat quarter. Now this one is made from 1 fat quarter, and the sizing we've got here, so from shoulder right down to the peak here, is 18 inches or 45 centimeters. So if you look, you can go down like that, and then all the way across the middle we've got 10 inches, 25.5 centimeters. So that's kind of giving you a bit of a guide as to what sort of sizing that you're looking at, and that's all from 1 fat quarter. Okay, so that sizing is from 1 fat quarter, and of course you can resize it to suit. So you'll need the fat quarter, or however many that you'd like to use for yours. Heat and bond. Now if you're not using your sewing machine for this, because this can all be hand sewn, but so if you're not using your sewing machine, use the other heat and bond. I think it's in a red packet, and it's the one that you don't have to sew. This is the heat and bond light that is sewable, so we sew around the edge of this one, and your shape. So I've just popped a link below with some ideas of different shapes that you could use, or you can get cutting out. This is a skull and crossbones shape that I've used for this one. Some hand sewing needles if you're hand sewing, or just for the buttons. Speaking of buttons, if you want to add some words on there, there's these Hobbycraft buttons with all different letters in there, and you could make up some cool little Halloween sayings on there. Pinking shears and normal shears, regular dressmaking shears. Pinking shears are just great for finishing off, so be good if you can. If you can't, that's fine, just use normal scissors. But if you have got some pinking shears, or you can get hold of some, then I would do, because they're a great help. Some tailor's chalk you will need, and use an empty pot for all of your scraps, because I hate discarding scraps, and I'm on my zero waste journey, so I do like to gather up any waste at all so that we can reuse it. So let's get started. First of all, take your fat quarter and iron it out nice and flat. Okay, so you will need an iron. I don't think I mentioned iron. Well, iron and sewing machine as well, and just general sewing paraphernalia. Some pins as well would probably be helpful. Hopefully not a stitch ripper, but you might want to have one to hand, just in case. Okay, so we've ironed out our fat quarter nice and flat without any creases. I fold it in half once long way, so this is so I've just folded, I pulled it out on the length. Can you see the long ways here? And then I turned it in once and turn it in twice, and then I can press that again so I know those folds. Take it back out for a minute, cut down so that it's now in half. So I'm going to cut down this edge, Now I put aside one, and I'm going to start by doing the front. Now I fold this in half lengthways, and what I want to do is cut out here, so either in a V or in a curve, however you'd like to. But what you need to know is, because this is for the neck, what you need to know is from the middle of the person that you're making it for, neck, to where you want the end of this point to be. So if you can just take that measurement for me. If I was looking at mine, I'd be about 5 inches. So if I was smaller, I'm going to bring that up to 3.5, and then take some tailor's chalk and mark that in, and then either curve it around or put it in a V, just knowing that this up here is the shoulders. Okay, so this along here is going to be the shoulders. You just want to draw that around. And if you want to double check so that make sure it's going to fit nicely, you could take more measurements, check where the shoulders are. But because it's costume, we don't have to be as particular with that. Also, you must remember that this is going to be pulled on and off. So you do need to leave enough room to do that, to pull it on and off over your shoulders. So there we go, and then I take the back, so that's the front, I go to the back, and then I just cut a smaller little dip, because that's just for the back. So I've just got a smaller dip on this side and a longer dip there. So now we've got the front and the back ready. The next thing that I want to do is apply my applique. So this is the front, the part with the V or the curve is the front. So now I want to look at where I want to place my applique, making sure you've got enough space on the side here for your seams. And then we can pop our applique on the front. So you're just following the manufacturer's instructions, cut one out of fabric, one out of heat and bond, and iron that on. So once you have applied your applique using the heat and bond, then you can, so depending on how you're going to do it, if you use the no-sew heat and bond, then you could just go straight ahead and add your buttons or any other decoration that you're wanting to add. Now I've decided to do a little pumpkin on this one, to do a slightly different one. So I've got a pumpkin that is ready to be sewn on. I've used the heat and bond light, so that means that I'll have to go around all of these edges using a zigzag stitch. Now when I go to my machine to use zigzag, I press the normal zigzag, I just press the regular zigzag stitch, so on this one it's number 7, and then I go to my stitch width and length. So I go to my width and I take it down slightly. It's normally a 3 on this machine. I take it down to a 2.5, and then it's the length that I want to get really tight. So I take that all the way down to a 0.5. So a nice tight stitch length. Width, it doesn't matter too much, that's just to your own preference, and I suggest you use a bit of scrap fabric and test out your zigzag first. Then when you're happy, you can go ahead and start going around. Now also with applique, you don't want to have too much backwards and forwards going on. So what you do is you start with a long thread trailing off. So you get started, you go around the whole way. If you just watch the middle of the foot against the edge of the fabric, so it goes zigzag on, zigzag off, around, around, around. Then when you get to the end again, you'll have another long thread trailing off, and then tie that in a knot. So rather than doing your backwards and forwards on your applique, just another little tip that I do. Right, so I'm going to go right ahead and zigzag that applique the whole way around. And then you can go ahead and hand sew on any buttons or any other paraphernalia that you want to add. So I'm just going to sew my words on onto my pumpkin. So hand sewing on, and then we're ready for the next step. And now that all the appliques are on and everything you need is done, then simply put the two sides, right sides facing each other, and you want to make sure that you're leaving enough space, so leave a chalk mark where the arms will go. So if you just take a quick little rough measurement around the armholes and leave enough space there. To give you a quick estimate, I've left 13 centimetres. Now I'm going to sew down these sides, and then I'm going to sew across the shoulders, and then that's all the sewing parts done. Now if you wanted to go and make this as a different size, you just need to look at your measurements. So I've got 2 fat quarters out here, so instead I could put the shoulders at the top here and the sides down here and cut away at the top, and this would make a adult size. But you can have some fun and play around with adding more or taking more away, and what is most fun about it is because it's a costume, you can just play really. So now with this one I'm going to turn it all the way through, and I've got my little top, and now I can go for it with the pinking shears. You could leave yours as it is if you like, trim it off if you just wanted to make it a bit smaller, or do like what I have done and create some jagged edges at the bottom. And then all of these little scraps you can put into an empty pot, or you can use them and hand sew them around or hand sew them onto the sleeve parts. You could do all sorts with these, but I like to keep them in a pot so that then I can decide what to do with my hand sewing needle later. And then cut away at the sleeves as well. Create that on both sides so that the armholes have got the pinking sheared edge as well. And we're done. Thank you so much for joining me on this Halloween make, and do join me for the next one in the costume making series. Bye for now.